So we're reading today from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 19, Text 24. This dear Govinda Prabhu just gave me the option to choose a verse, so I hope this is okay. Just a section that I've been reading and a verse that inspired me, and I hope it's inspiring for some of you as well. So again, this is Canto 9, Chapter 19, Text 24. Asevitam Varsha Pugan.
Asevitam Varsha Pugan.
Satvargam Vishayeshu Sa.
Sadvargam Vishayeshu Sa.
Chanena Mumuche Nidam.
Ksanena Mumuche Nidam.
Jata Paksha Iva Dvija.
Jata Paksha Iva Dvija.
Asevitam Varsha Pugan.
Asevitam Varsha Pugan.
Satvargam Vishayeshu Sa.
Sadvargam Vishayeshu Sa.
Chanena Mumuche Nidam.
Ksanena Mumuche Nidam.
Jata Paksha Iva Dvija.
Jata Paksha Iva Dvija.
Asevidam Varsham Pugan.
Sevitam Varsha Pugan.
Satvargam Vishayeshu Sa.
Sadvargam Vishayeshu Sa.
Chanena Mumuche Nidam.
Ksanena Mumuche Nidam.
Jata Paksha Idva Dvija.
Jata Paksha Iva Dvija. Sevitam Varsha Pugan.
Sevitam Varsha Pugan.
Sadvargam Vishayeshu Sa.
Satvargam Vishayeshu Sa.
Ksanena Mumuche Nidam.
Chanena Mumuche Nidam.
Jata Paksha Iva Dvija.
Jata Paksha Iva Dvija. Anyone else?
Asevitam Varsha Pungam.
Asevitam Varsha Pugan.
Sadvargam Visayeshu Sa.
Satvargam Vishayeshu Saha.
Shanena Mumushe Nidam.
Chanena Mumuche Nidam.
Jata Paksha Iva Dvija.
Jata Paksha Iva Dvija.
And just so those who just joined are aware, Ghanashyaprabhu is leading class on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 19, Text 24.
Okay, so we'll read the word for word, translation, and purport. Asevitam,
Sevitam,
being always engaged in.
being always engaged in.
Varshapugan,
Varsha Pugan,
for many, many years.
for many, many years.
Satvargam,
Satvargam,
the six senses, including the mind.
the six senses, including the mind.
Vishayeshu,
Vishayeshu,
in sense enjoyment.
in sense enjoyment.
Saha,
Sa,
King Yayati.
King Yayati.
Chanena,
Shanena,
within a moment.
within a moment.
Mumuche,
Mumuche,
gave up.
gave up.
Nidam,
Nidam,
nest.
nest.
Jata Paksha,
Jata Paksha,
one who has grown its wings.
one that has grown its wings.
Eva,
Eva,
like.
like.
Dvija,
Dvija,
a bird.
a bird.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Having enjoyed sense gratification for many, many years, O King Parikshit, Yayati was accustomed to it, but he gave it up entirely in a moment, just as a bird flies away from the nest as soon as its wings have grown. Purport. That Maharaj Yayati was immediately liberated from the bondage of conditioned life is certainly astonishing, but the example given herewith is appropriate. A tiny baby bird, dependent fully on its father and mother, even to eat, suddenly flies away from the nest when its wings have grown. Similarly, if one fully surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one is immediately liberated from the bondage of conditioned life, as promised by the Lord himself, Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo Mokshayishyami. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 4, Text 18, Kirata Hunandra Pulinda Pulkasha Abhira Shumba Yavana Kashadaya Yinyecha Papayad Apashraya Shraya Shudyanti Tasmai Prabha Vishnave Namaha. Kirata, Huna, Andhra, Pulinda, Palkasha, Abira, Shumba, Yavana, and Nakasa races, and even others addicted to sinful acts can be purified by taking shelter of the devotees of the Lord, for he is the supreme power. I beg to offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Lord Vishnu is so powerful that he can deliver anyone at once if he is pleased to do so. And Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, can be pleased immediately if we accept his order by surrendering unto him, as Maharaj Yayati did. Maharaj Yayati was eager to serve Vasudeva, Krishna, and therefore as soon as he wanted to renounce material life, Lord Vasudeva helped him. We must therefore be very sincere in surrendering ourselves unto the lotus feet of the Lord. Then we can immediately be liberated from all the bondage of conditioned life. This is clearly expressed in the next verse. Om Gyantimarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatan Sahagana Raganatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vashakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinobandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanjana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasade Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So beg for the blessings of the assembled devotees that we can say something in line with Guru Parampara, Srila Prabhupada, and may our words be pleasing to Shri Shri Radha Krishna. And may we all be benefited by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam together. Hare Krishna. So again, this is Canto 9, Chapter 19, which is entitled King Yayati Achieves Liberation. Text 24. Reading the verse again. Having enjoyed sense gratification for many, many years, O King Parikshit, Yayati was accustomed to it, but he gave it up entirely in a moment, just as a bird flies away from the nest as soon as its wings have grown. So this is the story of King Yayati, and I found it inspiring just reading it the other day, because it's the story of how a person finally changes directions completely. You know, isn't that what we want to hear about? You know, these stories of these personalities who, you know, were striving for Krishna consciousness, but hearing about how in a moment something shifts, something changes, some transformation takes place. You know, our spiritual life is a series of transformations, and very gradual, of course. But it's also very inspiring to hear when something powerful takes place within a person. And so King Yayati here in this verse, this change takes place, this transformation. Suddenly he's able to do something he wasn't able to do before. But King Yayati was so addicted, actually, to his own enjoyment. And we're all addicted to various forms of enjoyment. You know, it's like when someone is taking drugs, we think of a drug addiction. But we all have our various drugs, because it really doesn't matter what it is. But there's something that's just drawing my attention away from what is most essential, from what is most important. Whatever it may be that does that. You know, for some people, it can be heavy drugs like cocaine. It can be alcohol. But it can be anything. It can be sports. It can be politics. It can be music. You know, some people you get so into the music because you actually enter into these things because you want to lose yourself. You want to draw your attention away from yourself, and then you find these various things where you can do that. For some people, it's food. You know, so many addictions, so many drugs that we all have. It doesn't have to be an actual drug, but we have our different forms of different places that we go to kind of shut down, shut off, and just lose ourselves in something else. So King Yayati, when he was a young king, he was cursed, actually, that he would no longer be able to enjoy as a young person. He was actually given a curse by Sukracharya that he would immediately become old and he'd become an invalid. And he was so afraid of this, and he was so shameless that he actually approached, you know, he pleaded with Sukracharya to take away this curse. And Sukracharya said, no, I can't take it away. But if you can find someone to take the curse for you, then you can give it away and maintain your youth. So King Yayati was so shameless that he approached his own sons to ask them to take this curse. They were young men. And some of his sons refused, but he went to his youngest son, who was named Puru. And he asked him, I'm your father. I have this request of you. You please become old and allow me to keep your youth, and you become old, you become an invalid. And his youngest son, Puru, was so obedient. He thought, of course, you're my father. I mean, I exist because of you. I'm indebted to you. So I'll accept this curse and I'll become old. So it shows King Yayati was so attached to enjoying that he requested his own young son to become old just to avoid this curse upon him. And then so many, many years passed. And, you know, to his surprise, King Yayati, his desires, rather than decreasing through all those years, he says, Trishna upajayate. This is in a previous verse, that my thirst to enjoy actually was increasing. You know, he kept, you know, there's a verse here in this section too, I'll just read it. This is text 14 of the same chapter. But it emphasizes this point that sometimes we think, well, if I just enjoy more and more, finally, eventually it'll just weaken and go away. You know, if I do this, you know, I was mentioning different addictions that we have. Well, if I'll just burn myself out from doing so much of it, and then I'll give it up. But this verse 14 says, as applying butter to a fire does not diminish the fire, but instead increases it more and more, the endeavor to stop lusty desires by continual enjoyment can never be successful. You know, Prabhupada gives the example sometimes of, Prabhupada says that I've seen that in the Western countries, some old man, 80 years old, 85 years old, he's still going to the nightclub, even though he's incapable of enjoying. He still has this habit. He pays so much fee to get into the door, and he's giving so much of his money, trying to enjoy. Actually, he's incapable of enjoying. But still, this habit is so strong, still trying. The desires are not weakening. You know, I sometimes I'm with people, because of my job, I'm with people who are passing away. And it appears that their desires are starting to weaken. But actually, it's the body and the mind and the life force that starts to weaken, but the desires are still strong. You know, and those desires, if we pass away, you know, obviously the body has to die, deteriorate. The life force is starting to diminish. But there's another body we have. We have a subtle body. And if it's been charged throughout life with so many desires, when we drop the physical body, we still have this subtle body that is longing for certain fulfillments. And those desires are actually what draws to us another material body. So even when people are passing away at the time of death, it's not that the desires are just automatically weakening and going away. It's just that the body is going away, and the mind everything is diminishing in a sense, because of the, you know, pretty soon the soul is leaving this body. It's a preparation. This is a natural process, but the desires, if they're still there, they're almost like dormant for a little while. And then you give up the material form, the material body, but then you have a subtle body that's filled with these desires, and that's what causes reincarnation. That's what causes another material form to come to you. So King Yayati also has had this realization that actually it's not automatically going to weaken with time, these desires, but something has to be done, something has to happen. And in the first verse of this chapter, Shukadev Goswami, he actually explains what happens to Yayati. He gives a couple Sanskrit terms. He says, Bhutva. Bhutva means like the awakening of wisdom. Yayati finally had a realization. And this other term, nirvino. Nirvino means detachment. He had an awakening of knowledge within himself. He had an insight. You know, it's like, you know, this is like the fruit of material life. What is the real fruit of material life? From a spiritual point of view, you know, we live our lives and we go after so many things. The fruit that we're meant to get from living in this material world is that we're meant to have a realization of the futility of this material world. Mm. That's the fruit. That's the desired fruit. That's the insight we're meant to have with time. You know, I've tried so many ways to be happy. I've made so many attempts, but if I'm honest, I have to admit, I still don't have it. I still don't have what I really wanted. And I was fooled in a way, because everyone's telling me to go after this, to go after that. do this, do that. If you can just make this arrangement in your life, you'll get it. But if we're very honest, we have to admit that it's not happening. And so we look upon this material world, we see that actually nothing here can do it. My own attempts can't do it. And so this is a realization that awakens. So Sukadev Goswami says, this happened to King Yayati, Bhutva. Finally, some realization came. Realization of the futility of his attempts to enjoy in his own way and to actually become satisfied. Wasn't happening. It's another verse from this chapter. So this verse also describes this realization or this insight. This is like a fundamental insight that we need, you know, to really take spiritual life seriously. This idea that the material world, if we're still holding on to some hope that I'll get satisfaction from the material world, if we're still holding on, you know, to that, if we're still believing that, that will interfere with our really taking shelter of Krishna. Because we're still holding on to some hope, maybe I can get it. And so finally, when we realize, no, I'm actually going to go in a different direction now. Nothing here can do it. Then we can take shelter of all of our practices, of our chanting, of our hearing, of our associating with devotees, of our service. Because we're doing all those things, but we also need a certain quality to it. Taking deep shelter of it with realization. So this verse, this is same chapter, text 20. And who's this? Yes. Okay, this is text 20. One who knows that material happiness, whether good or bad, in this life or in the next, on this planet or in the heavenly planets, is temporary and useless, and that an intelligent person should not try to enjoy or even think of such things, is the knower of the self. So one who knows that material happiness, even if it comes, even if it's good, but one sees it, one understands that it's temporary, that person is the knower of the self. Such a self-realized person knows quite well that material happiness is the very cause of continued material existence and forgetfulness of one's own constitutional position. So we get into all these things in material life, and what it's really doing, it's causing forgetfulness. You know, like I was mentioning the addictions. We become addicted to things because it helps us forget the truth of our situation. You know, the spirit soul has turned away from Krishna. And because we've done that, there's a kind of lack, there's an emptiness. And we want to fill that emptiness. There's also a guilt that's there. You know, when we turn away from Krishna and there's guilt. How do you relieve guilt? Well, we can also relieve it in some quick way by just losing ourselves into some kind of satisfaction. You know, just like I was saying, you know, food can also be an addiction. And if we eat to actually, we're using the food to forget the guilt that we're experiencing, or forget the pain that we're experiencing, whatever it may be. You know, or the drug, we use the drug to forget the emptiness. And then what happens? You know, we do get a little relief for a moment. You know, we get we're saved by that thing for a few moments. But because it's not the real shelter, it's not really, we're not designed to go there for shelter. We're designed to go to God for shelter. And if you make anything else your God, a drug you can make your God. You know, any kind of enjoyment, you can make that your God. It's not God. But if you make it your God, it has like a form. It also kind of saves you for a few moments, just like God actually saves us when we really turn to him and take shelter. Those other things also save you for a few moments, but because they're not the ultimate shelter, what happens when it wears off, then we feel more guilty. And then we need more of it to cover that guilt. And this is the cycle of addiction. You know, this becomes like a cycle. We're going to these various places for shelter, but there's only one true shelter, which is Krishna. You know, those other shelters in this material world, those objects or people or places, whatever it may be, they actually save us. They save the false ego. They sustain and save the false ego when we fill ourselves up with them or take them into ourselves. We make them like, this is meant to be, this whole process is meant to be directed towards God. But instead, we get entangled in objects and people and different, it's amazing, you know, even like a little pill can just control your life. You know, we have to be very honest and look at what our addictions are and then understand why we're using those things. For what reason are we using it? To actually forget our true selves, to forget what's most essential, to forget the situation that I'm in, that I'm separated from God. I want to forget it, so I take these things to forget. And then we get so entangled in them, we find different ways and techniques to help us get through it. But those ways and techniques also, they're just other material substitutes. They also don't ever truly do it. Like, you know, you may have some addiction and then you learn some technique or some method, you know, whatever it may be, positive thinking, or I'll live more healthy, or I'll go see a psychiatrist, or I'll stop this bad habit, but then I'll take up this habit to kind of, you know, that also just becomes another material solution. It's not that that's never necessary. That may be necessary sometimes, but it actually never solves the problem. It substitutes one savior for another savior. Now this person or this method that I'm using is saving me from the addiction. It's just substituting one thing for the other. There's a verse in the 4th canto where Narada Muni explains this. And he explains that, you know, we have some burden in life. Whatever you do to try to counteract that burden will be another burden. And he gives the example, like if you have a weight on your shoulder, it's getting heavy, heavy, heavy. It's starting to bother you. You feel that weight. And you lift it. And then you move it to the other shoulder. So there's some relief. Finally, one shoulder is fine. But now with time, that burden is still there. It's on the other shoulder. And then we move it to the next place and the next place. That's all we can do in material life until we go to the true shelter. That is actually the solution to all of our addictions, whatever they may be. This art, this practice of turning to Krishna. So what do? You know, we're learning here, King Yayati. First of all, you know, whatever our attachments and addictions are, we have to have self-knowledge. We have to become aware of what are my addictions? Why do I go here for pleasure? Why do I keep returning to this? Self-knowledge and also self-honesty. We should know what we're doing and why, and not try to we shouldn't justify our attachments and our addictions. Oh, everyone's got something, I have something too. We should just admit, not feel not to destroy ourselves with self-guilt or anything like that, but we just clearly see why we're taking shelter of these other things. Uh, when you get into something, anything, then it starts to get into you, and you kind of shut down your consciousness. You think about all these pleasures. It's really this, we become unconscious by losing ourselves in it. And so whatever our habits or addictions may be, we shouldn't immediately take a permanent vow to give it up. We may not be able to. It's not like, you say you smoke cigarettes. And so maybe the best approach is not, I'll give it up forever now, because we know what happens. We try that for a little time, then we go back to it, then we feel more guilty. So you can continue whatever your addiction is, but you should try to stay conscious while you're doing that thing, whatever it may be. Say there's an addiction to food. So while you're eating, just stay awake. Don't use it to lose yourself. Don't use it to lose guilt that's there. Just stay very awake, and you eat it very consciously, knowing what you're doing. Without heavy self-judgment, just knowing, just seeing clearly. Again, the example of the cigarette. So you're smoking a cigarette. Okay, how do I overcome this habit? Maybe I can't just drop it. So I'm going to continue smoking, but I'm going to be very, very aware of what this tastes like, what I'm experiencing as I smoke. That sounds a little strange maybe to some of us, but the idea is you're not using the addiction to just shut things down and shut things off and just lose yourself in it. You're staying alert and conscious of what you're doing and why. And because you're awake and a little bit alert, Krishna can affect you, can help you because of your honesty, because of your sincerity. Okay, I'm addicted to this. I can't give it up right now, but I'm going to just accept what I'm doing and why, and be very much awake, because the real danger is when you do those things to shut off, and Krishna can't help you. You're unconscious. How can Krishna reach you? But Krishna can reach you if you're awake, if you're alert, if you're attentive while you do those things even. So like just, we get into sports. For me, that was a difficult, just getting into sports and different games and things like that. And I just get so absorbed. You forget everything. You lose yourself. But could you watch something? Could you watch sports? Just staying, not like losing yourself. Just, if you're not able to give it up right away. If you can give things up, that's great. But if you find yourself struggling with something for many years, and try this. Try just being a little awake. Don't lose yourself completely in the activity. If it's food, even alcohol, Prabhupada would say, right? If you're an alcoholic, you're drinking. Again, why do we drink? There's guilt. The alcohol helps us forget that guilt. We just shut everything off. So, but if you could drink while you're tasting the alcohol, Prabhupada would say, Krishna is the taste. Right? He would say that if you can somehow be aware of what you're doing, how you're actually using this thing for the wrong reason, but that's where you are. You have to admit you are where you are. But if you're remembering Krishna, if you're remembering yourself, that you're a soul, and here I am, I've become entangled in this situation. Krishna, only by your grace can I overcome this. So while tasting the alcohol, thinking of Krishna, staying conscious, staying alert, staying awake to what you're doing and why. And if we become committed to that, it's like I was in an ashram for about 11 years in New York City. And when I left the ashram, I started working in a hospital in New York. And, before I was living in the ashram, I drank a lot of coffee. And once I left the ashram, I thought, well, getting up in the morning, going to work, I'd like to I don't want to have coffee because it has caffeine. So I'll just start drinking a little decaf coffee. Right. So that was, my idea. So a little decaf, after all, it's decaf, right? That's what I was kind of telling myself. The funny thing is, it doesn't matter if it's decaf. I found myself after a few, in the morning, just somehow that habit, just another cup, another cup, another cup. And then I found I'm addicted to this. I've gotten addicted to this. So it was totally unnecessary. For so many years, I didn't do it. I didn't need it. Now I just felt this urge, and it wasn't even caffeinated. Right. So what I started doing is, and this is why I'm convinced of this point a little bit, and I like to share it, is that I didn't just stop immediately and say, okay, never again. What am I doing? But I was being honest. I wasn't making excuses that after all, it's decaf. What's the big deal? It's not even caffeinated. Everyone drinks coffee. Come on. This is just life, right? I didn't do that. I started saying, no, actually, I'm using this. There's some emptiness within me, and I'm trying to fill it with this thing. So I kept drinking it, but I started to become more conscious and awake and alert to what I was doing and just taking my time with it. And I started to really taste it. I stopped putting sugar in it, and I started thinking, this is disgusting. This took some time. This took like a couple months where it was like gradually, but I started, the amazing thing is when you become awake and alert to this habit or this addiction, you'll start to lose your taste for it because it has no taste. It doesn't actually have taste. Whatever it is, it's not actually satisfying. So if you become very attentive, like smoking a cigarette, just think, if you're really tasting it, it's like when we lose ourselves, we don't even taste it anymore. It just becomes this addiction. But if you can really just become conscious again through the habit, through the addiction, and experience it while you're doing it, and then day by day, you keep staying awake like that. And you keep asking Krishna, show me something, help me here. Only by your grace can this be given up. You're conscious of Krishna, you're conscious of yourself, you're conscious of what you're doing. You're very awake, you're very alert. You'll start to lose your taste gradually for that thing. Because the more awake we are, the more we'll realize it doesn't have taste. It's not actually satisfying me. So, and there will be moments when, if you don't reach out for that thing, then the emptiness and the pain will increase. And the only thing that can be said about that is that you have to just go through that. You have to endure it. You have to be willing when those desires are just reaching out for the thing they're used to. Sometimes all you have to do is just sit there and endure the pain of it and let it spend itself and take shelter of Krishna. Just endure it. It's dying. Something's dying. It has to die. Our self, we live this way, that myself, I'm in the center of everything, and I have these different attachments around me, and I want to take them into myself. And that way, it actually feeds the false ego. It feeds the subtle material body. Right. So, but if we can just, when we feel that pull to reach out for some other satisfaction, okay, I really, it's painful, it's difficult, but if you can endure through it, if you can just accept it, accept that pain, and do that again and again and again, you're gradually, by Krishna's grace, you're gradually overcoming. He's giving some insight into it. You're staying awake. You're willing to also endure. We've created these habits, and to lose them is going to be a little painful. So we also have to accept that and go through that pain instead of reaching out somewhere else and get some other habit. You give up alcohol, now you smoke cigarettes. You give up this, and now you do that. But we're never really going through the process of something dying within us. So all spiritual traditions teach this, that we have to die in order to truly live. So a habit also, when it's pulling on us, and we could actually just sit there in that emptiness in that struggle, and we now direct it to the true shelter. We direct it to Krishna. There'll be a kind of lamentation in our hearts, because it's like, Krishna's giving us insight because we're staying awake and we're asking for it. That actually the only thing I need is Krishna. If I could just surrender. Prabhupada says it so nicely here in the purport, the text 24. He said, Miraj, we must therefore be very sincere in surrendering ourselves into the lotus feet of the Lord. Then we can immediately be liberated from all the bondage of conditioned life. And he said, this is the secret of King Yayati. This is how King Yayati was able to overcome. For many, many years, he was actually addicted to sex, to enjoyment. So much so that he gave a curse that was directed to him. He gave it to his young son. I need to enjoy more. I'm not ready to become old. And then many, many years passed. And instead of decreasing, the desires were increasing. And finally, he became honest with himself. And he started to see what was happening. He was starting to wake up. And when we're honest, and when we're clear, and when we're awake in that way, Krishna can start to direct a little bit. Right. And then finally, I'll read the next verse, text 25, and I'll end there and see if there are any thoughts or comments, questions. Text 25 gives, it shares this truth with us of how this is actually possible and why it worked for King Yayati. He was so addicted. So it says, because King Yayati completely surrendered unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, he was freed from all contamination of the material modes of nature. Because of his self-realization, he was able to fix his mind upon the transcendence, Parabrahman, Vasudeva, and thus he ultimately achieved the position of an associate of the Lord. Prabhupada mentions also in the purport to text 24, a verse from the Bhagavatam, another verse, 2:4:18, and he gives a list of these different races. We don't know much about those races, but if you look in the purport to that verse, you'll say these people, Prabhupada says these people are now, these are people who deviated from the Vedic culture and went to other parts of the world. And he mentions those places, Turkey, Greece. And so these different names, Kirata, Huna, Andhra, Pulinda, these are different people who went away from the Vedic culture. And it says here, they became very addicted to sinful acts. But they can also be purified by taking shelter of the devotees of the Lord and taking shelter of the Lord, for he is the supreme power. So that quoted in this purport is describing all these, this is us, the Western world, many of us from wherever we're from, America, different parts of Europe, but we've also we are part of these, collectives that have gone away from the Vedic culture, and now we have an upbringing which is very heavy, very intense. We're encouraged to have all kinds of addictions. And for everything that we want, there's somebody there to supply it. And well, someone would say, well, there's so many, we don't call them addictions when they're so-called good things. It's just this, it's just a cup of coffee. It's fine. You have a desire and there's someone there to fulfill it. But those people that are there to fulfill all these desires where we become addicted, they're not our friends. They're not our friends. Our friends, like Srila Prabhupada will tell us, the real shelter is Krishna. There's something that's lacking and you're seeking something to save you. And you get saved for a few moments by these material things. But actually you're getting more and more entangled. So endure through the pain of that attachment. Stay awake, stay alert, take shelter of the Supreme Lord. And you'll see that when that takes place, when we actually surrender to God completely, fully, full-heartedly, then nothing will be lacking. We'll realize that my whole life there was a longing for something, and I misdirected. I sent it out to so many places and so many people and so many things. But now I'm returning it. This is where we're intended to send out our longing is to the Lord. So when we chant, when we serve, we should remember this. And in this way, whatever our addictions and attachments are, they can be overcome by this process. And this is in the story of King Yayati. For so many years, he felt hopeless that it was possible. But then in these verses, we're seeing that finally this change takes place. And this is how it takes place. By returning the consciousness to the Supreme Lord. We have to return our consciousness to God. So I'll stop here. If there are any thoughts, comments, questions, feedback, be happy to discuss further.
Mother Damayanti has shown a heart. Thank you for your class, Ghanashyaprabhu. I feel touched by it, your mood, and yeah, there's so much there. You know, you open so many doors to some productive discussions. One thing, like you emphasize, like about to be honest. You know, while we're indulging in the escapist our habit to avoid pain, avoid the pain of guilt, of shame, and you know, we use language a lot, like in our seminars and programs, like to experience your experience, or to feel your feelings. So of course, and that's true. That's like foundational for conscious living. I'm conscious of what's happening for me, my feelings, my thoughts, my bodily sensation. At the same time, you know, without some sublime foundation and context, it can just become a sort of new age thing. Feel your feelings, and that's the goal. Well, it's not, in a sense, in itself, it's no great achievement, but it is foundational for a purposeful life. And I like, because that's where you started the class. So that, okay, because if I'm honestly encountering myself when I'm engaging in, indulging in those material habits driven by the lower modes of nature and driven by Maya's illusion, if I'm honestly encountering, that's, you know, as you said in your class, that's going to move me to super soul realization. That's going to move me to connect with the higher guidance within, whatever term we want to use. And whereas if we're just unconsciously doing unconscious things, then as you said, we just get further entangled in layers and layers of false ego and illusion. So this, experience our experience, feel our feelings as a platform for progressing towards higher principles of life. Yeah, I also appreciate that you made the point about we're all addicted, you know, to whatever extent we're not steadily absorbed in that higher taste that is bhakti, then we're, you know, there's no void in the universe, so we're gonna fill that lack of higher taste with some material addiction. I'm reminded there's a book by Gabor Mate, and the book's called In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts. He's become quite a sought-after speaker. And anyhow, he was a physician. Maybe I know he's a physician, and he was basically treating drug addicts in downtown Vancouver, like the worst neighborhoods of Vancouver, and they had a clinic. And so that's kind of the theme of his book about he looked at himself, and it's humorous, but it was also serious. He could see everyone has addictions, and like some is to heroin or crack cocaine or like that. It's like he would have this completely irrational addiction to classical music CDs. CDs were the thing at the time, like in the 90s. And just, he said he'd be driving home from the, to his affluent place in the suburbs, and he'd see like a music store, and he'd go in and he'd get the same symphony that he already had 3 versions of that he'd never listened to, but this was a slightly different orchestra, and he needed to have it, and he would spend money, and he could see he's running from something. And he had all of these very, very first world, very, very affluent type of addictions, but he could see he's dealing with the same stuff as his crack addicts, as his patients. Oh, okay. As a footnote tonight, he somehow got a hold of my book, Relationships That Work, and in the book, he got some sense of the higher taste principle, because where he goes in his book is, we're all addicted, and let's be conscious of what's it serving. And so anyhow, we back in the day, it was Skype. We had some Skype exchanges, and he started cultivating the higher taste through chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So I appreciate it so much about your class, and I've just touched on a few things. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you. That's an amazing example. Yeah, it's like, it could be anything, because it's not so much the thing, but it's what we're doing.
Yeah.
And we're trying to avoid and escape from something. But if we're willing to admit that wow, where am I actually meant to go for shelter? Like you said, the higher principles that are also there, because we could just substitute it with another healthy material solution. Okay, I had this bad habit. Well, this healthy thing has helped me get off this bad habit.
Yeah.
But that still doesn't work. It's still just substituting one thing for the other. And if we could live many, many years like Yayati, we would realize that. See, we have just a short lifespan, and we think, well, now I have this healthy habit, and so what's the problem? I feel better. I feel much better than I did. But if we could live many, many, many more years, we'll see that there's also, the emptiness has not gone away, even with this so-called healthy material solution. So then what is it? Now where do I go? And finally, when we're honest and open, Krishna, like you said, super soul in the heart, can give us the direction that actually we're all meant to be returning to Krishna, to God, and he can help us with that when we're sincere. Thank you. Anyone else?
Laura has her hand raised.
Hi, Hare Krishna. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for your class. It's been a while that I joined a class. Well, actually, I went to my auntie's class on Wednesday, so this week. I really enjoyed it. It was like really easy to. I've been to a few of your classes before, and I always enjoy them. It's just easy to understand and hear the message in your words, and I love the practical examples and drawing from your work. So there were a lot of pieces that I took from it that I'm not going to repeat, but I just wanted to say thank you. And a lot of what you spoke about, I could really relate to, and I can see how I can take it into my day with some of my own addictions, chocolate, some food, other things. So thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for your encouragement and for sharing.
I have a question. Tommy, I'll see here. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Nice to see you.
Thank you for the class. I am experiencing like all of my material desires that I wasn't admitting are coming to the surface. I'm finally admitting that I even have those desires, or like I'm just experiencing like a fever, for months of, and maybe it goes up and down a little, but generally just feel like a higher fever of frustration, of unfulfilled desires. And in between Yeah, I'm experiencing consciousness, like I'm trying to be conscious. And anyway, I'm struggling to like surrender, to shift all of this focus just towards Krishna, or like whatever that means. Sounds so general. I don't even know what that would specifically look like. I mean, I guess immediately thought like, oh, I could do Sankirtan for Prabhupada. That's an exact thing. And okay, and I am trying to do that. Yeah, I just feel like it's intense right now with frustrations, desires. I won't go into all the details. I appreciated the insight you brought with just doing or pursuing those desires or doing those things, but with consciousness. And also enduring pain. And I wondered, like, what does enduring pain look like? Like, what are the options? Breathing, like sitting, like I don't want to run to talk to a friend, because that could easily be me running towards personal growth to escape the pain of at least that someone hears me or sees me. It's like I don't know, like, what are my options for enduring pain? That's my question.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it's sometimes the pain can grow so great, it can become really overwhelming. I remember sitting, on my couch once and because of something not happening that I wanted to have happen, like you said, a desire that was not being fulfilled. And I just decided to sit there and just experience it. And it was like so heavy that I felt like at some point I was just like couldn't move, and when it gets that strong and that heavy, yeah, we immediately, like you said, want to reach out to something. But I definitely seen through the years of practicing just to stay there, to stay with it. And you, like you mentioned, what does it look like to actually endure? It may mean just to feel whatever you're feeling. It's not going to last. That pain is not going to just like be overwhelming forever. Maybe something just has to be experienced for a few minutes, but you just go there. And the idea is that you're starting to practice this, you're practicing this letting go, and this kind of actually like a dying is taking place. And not that we can do that all day every day, but there are certain moments where the pain is so great that we can just sit and just take it. Sometimes what I'll do is experience that, and then I'll try to take shelter of maybe some lecture from Prabhupada, something like that. And even with that, you have to be a little careful that you don't just fill up the time, fill up with another thing, listen to 10 lectures straight or something like that, because even spiritual things like spiritual books, they can still be misused as me avoiding what I need to actually go through. But I find that, hearing Prabhupada, the sound vibration is so pure. He's such a well-wisher. And just kind of, feel whatever I feel, and now just gently listen, and almost with an attitude of Krishna, help me here, show me something, may something be spoken here that can give me just a little relief, a little understanding. So when you chant also, like this can be brought to the chanting. This is also something to do when we're in such a situation, not with a busy mind or restless mind, but just kind of like feeling what we're feeling, and very I was saying, like a gentle lamentation to the Lord that he can protect us from what we're going through, that he can give us a little shelter, just a little strength to get through. It can take the form of a prayer, like a very sincere prayer. You can also do that. These are just some thoughts, but I appreciate your question, because yeah, I know what you mean. There's like It's just that feeling sometimes, or unfulfilled desires, or things we want to do, or just uncertainties. It's all mixed in there. And like you said, like a kind of feverish feeling. What is it? You know, we don't want to take like a feverish, restless mind and just like throw it on Krishna. But there's also a way of just being with it, taking it in, feeling it, and then gently seeking shelter sincerely with Krishna. Please help me here. Just some thoughts, but appreciate your vulnerability and sharing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else have comments on that, or anything?
Hare Krishna, Ghanashyaprabhu. Oh, sorry, I just see Susan. We both at the same time. Susan is my roommate. She's in the other room. That's so amazing. So I'll go.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, so nice. We're competing for your time. So yeah, I just want to say thank you so much, and it's really nice to see you again.
You too.
Yeah, and I wanted to express my appreciation for how, again, like Laura expressed, how you've given such practical examples and sharing of yourself and your own addictions and what that kind of looks like, and feeling your feelings and taking those steps forward. And I feel hope, because I feel like a lot of feelings have been suppressed. So I just wanted to say I'm feeling my feelings. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for being an example of that. Yeah. There is definitely hope, you know. It's like we also have to realize that we can't do it ourselves. You know, so like we're frustrated with ourselves and not being able to overcome whatever's going on inside of us, but actually we can't overcome that.
Yeah.
But we can sincerely take shelter of Krishna in certain moments, and by his grace it's possible. So it's a really powerful realization to, you know, that really helped me relax a little bit when I realized that actually I can't overcome these things on my own. I can shift one habit for another habit. I can substitute things. I can kind of like hold off for some time, but I can't overcome anything without bringing Krishna into it. If we really realize that, we'll relax a little bit in the pain or whatever we're going through, because we're going to realize, well, because it's also mixed with a frustration that I'm not doing it. You know, I failed again. And there's that gets mixed into the problem, is that I'm frustrated that I can't control this. But we can't control it. We have to realize that and let go and let Krishna take over. And therefore I have hope, because it's not hope in me. It's hope that if I do this again and again, if I remember this again and again, then the hope is in Krishna, that he'll help us. And I've seen that in my life.
Yeah, so encouraging. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Hare Krishna.
And I just wanted to also thank you for this beautiful class. It really has touched my heart. And for me, it's brought up the example that I've been able to verbalize more deeply recently. It's the addiction to planning and to look forward to, which has really come through for me. Small background here, for the last 2 years, I've been looking forward to these senior apartments, you know, from the time they were conceived. And I've been, you know, calling them every few weeks and looking forward to the location and everything else on the northwest side of Gainesville, and started to move some carloads 3 weeks ago. And 2 weeks ago today, I was sitting in the apartment and I had a physical reaction to the new carpeting, the new everything. And there was also mold in the first unit that I was in. The apartments are not ready for prime time, and they were sending people in anyways. But I sat there, and during a meditation, I just got this message, like, this is not for you. you know, this is not for you. And because of all the planning and the excitedness about the whole place, I just burst into tears at the recognition of that. You know, this is not the place for you. And I swear a day later, I felt there was this entire release where I feel like giving everything away, you know, and just giving the reins over, you know, because I am so not in charge here. So, it was just it's such a deep realization. And, you know, I'll be 64 in a few weeks here. So luckily it's starting to come through. But the recognition that there can be an addiction in planning and in just being perhaps overly excited about something. And I just feel with God's grace, you know, tuning in and getting quiet, that really came through for me. So thank you for verifying that, basically. Appreciate you.
Thank you. That's an amazing example and an experience that, yeah, planning, you know, it's another, it's you know, another this desire to control the plan, to make sure, and then you to have to just to be sitting there and to, like you said, some indication from God within you to like let that go and like to burst into tears from that. I mean, it's so powerful how you described it. To relinquish that, you know, strong habit of just planning, protecting, controlling. You know, we all have it. And when we can actually let that go a little bit, you still make plans in life, but you make them very lightly, and you know that God is in control. And so to live in that way is to live by faith. You know, it's like we make some plan and then we try to force it to happen. We force it to happen. It's the opposite of faith, but another kind of attitude of where you're waiting, like they say, a wait and see attitude. You make some plan, you have some idea, but let's wait and see what's revealed. Let's wait and see, like, you know, if it comes from me forcing it, you know, like you experienced, it's not always going to be to our benefit. But if we actually trust and just wait for the revelation, it's going to be revealed. It's always going to be revealed with time of which direction, this or that. But if we trust and we depend on God for that revelation, and he starts to show us certain things, and then we can move in that direction, and then let's see what comes next. Again, I have to wait and see again. But I appreciate that. A very inspiring message. Thank you.
Thank you.
In this discussion, I'm reminded of the, thanks for your comments, Laura. Yes, thank you, Ghanashyaprabhu, and everyone who's sharing. I'm reminded of the Matras Parshas Dukanteya verse from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, text 14. And Krishna talks about happiness and distress, which is a way to summarize the millions of nuances of human experience, happiness and distress. But, you know, that's a summary. It's like one must tolerate without being disturbed. So I see this tolerate means we're conscious, means we're not pushing it down like a beach ball and pretending it's not there. Neither are we indulging in it, and we're experiencing them. We're not indulging and losing ourselves in the experience. So to tolerate without being disturbed means, as you said, we're conscious, and that it's anicca, they're non-permanent, as you were just saying, right? Happiness, distress, all of the material emotions from the mind, they're non-permanent. They're non-permanent. So tolerate means continue to do our best to do devotional service while experiencing all of the subtleties of the material emotion and thought. And even if he says happiness too, because I guess we've talked a lot about when we're feeling the pain and the shame, the guilt. I know for myself, sometimes I go to my life alienating habits when I'm happy, because when I have material happiness, things went well, I did it. This is great. Let's go to the refrigerator. Let's watch Super Bowl highlights. I'm happy. So like any material emotion, could be sadness, could be pain, and it could be material. And then by noticing it, then I get more and more of the distinction between that material gratification, which I label as happiness, and the actual happiness of the soul that comes from engaging in transcendental vibration like this. As far as the endurance, in one sense, that whole endurance, when we're noticing and we're consciously choosing not to indulge in the life alienating habit, in a sense, that's the purpose of human life. I'm reminded of Lord Rishabhadev's teachings to his sons, Tapo Divyam Putrakanina Sattvam, to do austerity, for the material conditioned soul. Yeah, I want to engage in those, in those self-alienating habits, and I'm choosing not to, and it's painful, as you said. And he says, and then we open the door to ever increasing spiritual bliss. That's not non-permanent. That's truly substantial. One thing I'll add. So you read text 24 of chapter 19, canto 9. And during your class, you read text 14. As applying butter to a fire does not diminish the fire, but instead increases it more and more. The endeavor to stop lusty desires by continual enjoyment can never be successful. In fact, one must voluntarily cease from material desires. In my personal reading, I'm on chapters 11, 12 of Canto 7. And that's where Narada Muni is explaining to Maharaj Yudhisthira about like the 4 varnas, the 4 ashrams. So towards the end of the Varna chapter, I think it's chapter 11, he says something that is the exact opposite.
Yes.
Yeah, because he says, yes, he says that, yeah, pouring a few drops of ghee on fire won't put out the fire. The fire represents Dusparena Nalena Cha, the fire of material desire. He said, but if you do put like a big clump of ghee, then the fire might go out. And my understanding, and Prabhupada, of course, carefully explains this big clump on the fire. That's not our process. But that there's, at certain times, for certain sectors of the population, there is eat 30 pieces of pizza, you'll be so sick, you'll give up your addiction to pizza, like that. Yeah. So for certain sectors, if you see it in the context. So in other words, it is a process, the extreme gross indulgence. It doesn't generally work. I mean, it might temporarily fill me with disgust and pain and revulsion, but then, okay, well, maybe next week I'll replace it with a new material habit like that. So I just wanted to share that because I know you're reading this verse, this chapter in your personal reading. So in my personal reading, I read that verse from Narada Muni 2 days ago.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it's lets us see another perspective. Like there are some gurus who actually apply that method.
Yeah.
Just get into it completely. You're gonna get disgusted. But like you said, Prabhupada, that's not exactly our method. But yeah, there's some things, some strange things can lead to realization sometimes.
Yeah.
Anyone else have anything?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for your class. I was kind of stimulating and kind of stimulated my thoughts kind of all over the place, actually. So I don't have like a super clear focus, but I just want to share a couple of things that where I was stimulated with. And one thing about this idea of like, okay, I have this habit, I have this addiction, and then I'm not giving it up based on results. Like it's not happening. I've been trying or whatever. I've experienced that. I've experienced that before. I'm experiencing that now. And just had a coach training class this past week, where also I brought that up, and it was in relation to like this concept of like, okay, there's our psychophysical nature, there's our karma, whatever it is, our maybe a diagnosis, some kind of label, our astrology, whatever it is, that's kind of, it's karma essentially, that is and that may include like addiction or this kind of addictive habit, or this kind of, it looks a certain way because of my karma. And then so on one side there's like, you know, this principle of like meeting myself where I'm at, and you know, just accepting my psychophysical nature, accepting the limitations that I have or the reality. And that's on one side, you know, and then the other side is like, you know, transcending the karma, breaking through the karma, transformation, you know, limitation, like, you know, no holding back or whatever, just like I can stretch myself to break through this, you know, limitation of my karma or whatever it is. And there's like a balance between those. So that came up for me, like in the class, because I was hearing, yeah, because part of that is like what you're presenting, like, yeah, if I can't break through, if I'm not breaking through my karma, this whatever psychophysical nature, this addiction that I'm having, then I can you know, meet myself where I'm at. Okay, I'm going to continue that. I don't need to increase the guilt of like, I'm trying to change it, but I'm not doing it. Don't need to increase that guilt. Like, okay, this is what I'm doing this habit or whatever. And but then also like the stretchy part, you know, breaking through the karma is to, yeah, have the intelligence, the consciousness switched on and be not escaping and be like fully experiencing. That's like, so I found it like a really nice integration of like those two sides, you know, a balance of those two sides. And another thing I wanted to just was stimulated with is that, yeah, that you were pleasure seeking entities, and so it's natural that we want to seek pleasure. And then in this material world, it's like we're so burdened. You mentioned like the burden of the shoulders, like we're so burdened and like in a really like negative state that we take, you know, any escape or relief as pleasure, whenever it's not really, you know, this only full positive pleasure is like spiritual pleasure. But we're so burdened, or probably I'd say like embarrassed by like material nature, that we take just a relief or a escape as that's actual pleasure. And so it's like important to, and I think being aware and being conscious, then I can maybe experience that a little bit more, like, oh, this habit, this thing I'm doing is not an actual positive pleasure. It's just I'm relieving of this thing I was feeling before. So it's like maybe we can give some guidance to that distinction. Those are a couple of things that I want to share. But yeah, I appreciate. I have more I could keep sharing, but those are a couple of things that came to my mind that I want to share.
Thank you. No, I love what you shared. Your first point of like, you know, we have to accept where we are. And at the same time, we want breakthrough, and we want to do what it takes to overcome, and how they both have to exist simultaneously. Those two, you know, inclinations to, first of all, just to accept what is, but we still know that we do want to overcome, and we want to do what's necessary. It doesn't have to be like frantic activity or searching all kinds of things. Like you were mentioning, it can also just be consciousness, being more attentive. It can be gentle. It can also be with the understanding that by taking shelter of Krishna, he can change me. Krishna can change me. So it's not like get busier and busier and do more and more and try harder and harder. But it's also, you know, some of that has to be there. Of course, we have to do whatever we can do. But it's also with an understanding that, but it's only by Krishna's grace. And again, that realization will help us relax a little bit and not just become like frantically trying harder, trying to do more service. More service. Maybe I'm not doing enough service. More service, more service. And it's kind of like trying in the wrong way. That can also, of course, there's a great mercy in performing service, and there's great blessings that come from that as well. But just to see that there's another way to approach it, which is understanding our dependence on Krishna and continuing to try, but to realize that he has to be pleased with us. And when he's pleased and he blesses us, it will happen. So that, anyway, just appreciating that first point you made of those two sides and how they can be kind of balanced together. Yeah, thank you.
As the saying goes, work like everything depends on us, and pray like everything depends on Krishna simultaneously. If we just pray like everything depends on Krishna, it can become a sort of victim-y relationship with Krishna. You have all the power, I have none. Well, that's not true. Right? So at the same time, if we take Krishna out of the equation altogether, then it becomes a karma mimamsa philosophy that Krishna himself preached to his dad. Yeah, and Prabhupada sharing that integrated balance between accept, like, because there's a distinction between acceptance and resignation. Resignation is like, that's it, what can I do? Yeah, I'm just here, I accept it, stuck, stagnant, no light at the end of the tunnel. That's resignation, but acceptance is actually a joyful platform for breakthrough. If we don't accept something, we're not going to change it. So actual acceptance as a foundation for continued progress.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything they'd like to share?
I see Rukmini has her hand up.
Please.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So many things to say, and probably will listen over again and take notes. The very first point you mentioned about changing, like big time change that can come in a moment, very much resonated with me this morning. Because it sounds like the opposite of the indulging theme. That in order to kind of put out the fire, it's just going for it, but then your one moment transformation in the direction of relinquishing, like giving up, just it's another measure of extreme, it's an extreme measure of really going for a new direction in life. So that's seems to be the only hope, for some people like myself even, to just cut through the notes of material attachment. And so also the other point I wanted to bring up, this obviously can be developed, but I'm just throwing some points. The other point you mentioned is about why there is addiction. It's because we need to feel some emptiness, some vacuum, right? So I was like thinking about this vacuum, how is it created? What is it about, this vacuum? Because, so philosophically, it's like, because we say, Matir na Krishna, we don't want you, Krishna, just leave our vision. And so it creates a vacuum, and then material energy rushes in to fill this vacuum.
Mm.
So that's how I see it. You know, it's become, because material energy or material or whatever you want to call it, it abhors emptiness, abhors vacuum. So it just, you know, it will fill it with anything just so we, you know, we feel so-called complete, because we pushed away the source. We pushed away the source of everything. Like you said, you know, if we have Krishna, we don't need anything else. So it's very extreme, because in material existence, we have to make sure everything works. You know, we have to like be realistic and practical. And so like, where is the line, you know, between too much and too little, you know, this whole yogic principle of balance and yeah, being functional. And yeah, there's so many other things that come in, because in relationship to Krishna consciousness, it's not just regular yogi, you know, it's, we have so much content coming with Krishna consciousness. There's a lot. It has to do with the senses, you know, with content, with the form, with, you know, devotional service. There's so many items, so many rules, so many regulations. And there's the beauty, there's the attractiveness. Yeah, so it's just like I get swept, you know, into that aspect of, you know, it feels something. And yeah, so there's always some kind of running away in one way, in one sense, but there's also this Krishna consciousness has meaning, right? So yeah, so it's just like I'm just kind of playing with all these concepts, because they're all true, and just how to balance the whole thing. Yeah. So really, if you want to speak a little more about the vacuum or whatever you feel inspired to expand on based on what I already shared, I appreciate that and loved you, class. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. I didn't hear at the very end if you asked something, but did anyone hear?
Well, I was just saying, you know, so initially I was like thinking in terms of philosophically, yeah, how to see this emptiness, you know, how to interpret this emptiness, you know, what to do with this, you know, this is one aspect that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you said it right. You know, that it's not a time that we can remember. Prabhupada always says time since time immemorial, but something in us turned away from Krishna, and you know, the desires to be Krishna in our own way. We put ourselves in the center of things. And so and like you said, as soon as now that's impossible because Krishna is the center, but we can put ourselves, we can pretend to be the center under an illusion. And so Krishna provides a place where we can play out that illusion, you know, this material world, and I can act like the center. I can get things for myself. I can have things circling around me, you know, my family, my situation, my desires. And that's become so, it's become so deeply imprinted in our consciousness, that concept, that idea. And so, but the more we become aware of it and we realize that this is the main problem, there's no enemy outside of me. You know, this is really why I'm here. This is really what's going on. Now I want to face it, Krishna. Now I want to see it. And I want to keep turning to you to help me overcome it. You know, and so I'm in this situation, Krishna. Now because of that, it's become such a habit that all these things I'm addicted to, I'm attached to, and I get relief from them. I remove some of the pain by going in that direction. So this is where I am. Maybe I can give it all up immediately, but I need your grace. See, we can't overcome material nature, but we can subdue material nature by Krishna's grace. it can be subdued. It can't be overcome by our will. And so realizing that, we keep turning to the Lord and just asking for his involvement and his intervention, his love. But yeah, I think you said it rightly with that emptiness is there because of this original turning away. And we've become very much entangled in this concept of I'm the enjoyer, I'm the controller, I'm the doer. You know, I'm the doer, I'm the controller, I'm the enjoyer, all those things. It's all the same thing. Me being in the center.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. What I'm saying was it's very easy to get entangled again. Inside devotional service, so to speak. You know, it's possible to replace, you know, in the name of devotion, in the name of bhakti yoga, in the name of Krishna. You know, it's so easy to be attracted again to the external appearance, the external factors, you know, because I mean, philosophically, we understand, you know, okay, you know, we put Krishna there, so it's different. We put the one, but still, you know, it's very easy to glide and to to be taken over, you know, by external consideration, you know.
Yeah.
Attractiveness, appearance, you know, the body, paraphernalia, it can be infinite, you know, in that sense, you know.
Yeah, some people, like we were talking about, you can get addicted to anything. You can also get addicted to religion in the wrong way. You know, like you, it can be another kind of escape. You can escape into religion. You can escape into Krishna consciousness. But I think the fact that you're aware of that awareness, if it becomes more and more profound, that awareness will protect you. So the fact that you're already seeing that that's a possibility is showing that you're very conscious, you're very alert. And if you go about Krishna conscious activities, staying aware that even this I can somehow trap myself in even this, even though, you know, what we see, the objects and everything is divine. You know, what we hear is divine. When we hear Prabhupada, what we see when we see the deities it's divine. But at the same time, my mind can use it for the wrong reason, and I can find myself even with these things, these spiritual things. Somehow I have to be careful. I have to be aware. And the fact that you are aware, I think it will be the protection. And then again, so then what do we do with that awareness? We know that even there, we have to be cautious. Then we long for the real thing. We long to really see the deities. We long to really hear. What does hearing really mean? What does chanting really mean? Maybe I'm not doing it in the right way, even after all these years. Krishna, show me what it really means. Give me a little taste. Give me an experience of the real thing. And so that Krishna responds to that.
Thank you for your answer. Yeah.
I don't know if it was helpful, just sharing some thoughts, but thank you for your points.
Thank you, Ghanashyaprabhu, for leading class and discussion with such inspiration. Srimad Bhagavatam ki.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, everyone. Haribol.
Krishna.